Hello and welcome. Aquarister here, back with another video, and today we are in the PTR. Now, the PTR just dropped, and a lot of us have been very excited to be checking things out. I personally wasn't sure if I was actually going to hop into the PTR for this kind of push of it, but I did decide to jump in there. I did not check out the Elysian Wilds. My whole goal of the PTR was to play with the Flail, get an idea for it. See how it's feeling, if I notice any bugs, anything like that, report anything, and honestly, Flail itself is feeling really good. I've been really happy with it so far and been having a lot of fun just playing around with different ideas and different builds. So that is kind of what today's video is going to revolve around, is specifically the Flail. We can definitely get into more expansion in Season 3 type of content down the road, which leads me into, if this video does help you out, please give it a like. It does help me out a lot. And if you'd like to see more content like this, including Season 3 and expansion build videos and other information, definitely subscribe to the channel. You'll get notified when new videos come up, and then you can kind of check out all that new content as I am putting it out there. So let's get into today's video. All right, to get us started, let's just take a look first at the Flail light and heavy attacks. It looks really nice. The animations are nice. They did do a good job with the sounds as well. And the range doesn't seem to be too crazy with it. They kind of said it's a quote-unquote range melee type of weapon, but it definitely still just feels like a melee. The range of it doesn't feel really any further than like a greatsword or something to me. But it does feel good. I like the movement and the animation of it. Now, one of the really cool things that they actually changed with both Flail and Sword, so anything that pairs with a shield, is they actually removed the attributes from shields. So now with your Sword and Shield or your Flail and Shield combo, you no longer need to be running a shield in order to get the full attributes. So what they ended up doing, we'll look at a Sword here. And what they ended up doing is they stacked all of those attributes that normally would have been on, split between the sword and the shield, is now all stacked into either the sword or the flail. So what that essentially allows us to do is run either one without a shield and still get our full attribute amount. So that was a really good change. And honestly, after playing with the flail and seeing kind of how it is, it definitely seems like that was needed, because as you can see with the flail, same way we get the full attributes and all of that. But when we look at, like, let's say Sword and Shield, for example, when we're looking at Sword and Shield, they have 3 different abilities that all require the shield, right? Flail is not like that. The way that Flail works is, instead of having specific abilities that utilize the shield like the Sword and Shield does, they actually have perks. So we'll take a look at this one here, this Reductive Superiority. So as you can see, they actually lay it out. So the Round, Kite, and Tower Shield each have different buffs or debuffs depending on the ability, on what it can do. So it's really cool because depending on what you want out of that perk, you can actually change your shield, or it might depend on your armor weight or anything like that. So it's a very cool concept with the flail and shield, and a really good change for sword and shield as well, because there are some people who have wanted to try like just a sword, but it just made 0 sense to ever do that because you're just hurting yourself at that point. So now there is a chance that you could see like an assassin build that might not run a shield be able to run a little bit higher armor on their, sword and whatever they end up using for their secondary. I'm not really sure. I haven't done any testing in terms of sword and shield goes for that to see if it's worth it. But with flail, with my healer build so far, I'm really liking it without the shield because I get that little bit of extra armor, a little bit of extra protection. And honestly, I didn't find myself blocking. You do get the extra perks and stuff, but we'll see down the road and as time goes on and when it comes to live, what all changes with that. Because obviously the PTR, a lot could change. A lot of ideas might shift around. So that's why I don't want to do any specific build videos until live actually hits the live servers there. All right, so next, let's take a look at the attribute or the mastery of the flail and really start to look deeper into the actual builds. I'm not going to go over like full builds, but we're just going to go through each ability and each perk so you can get an idea of maybe what you want for a build. And then come live, I'll be releasing my build videos. So let's take a look over at the mastery though. All right, so taking a look at the mastery for Flail and Shield. We'll first look at the Cleric side, and then I'll kind of show the abilities, and then we'll hop over to the Bastion side, and I'll show some of those abilities. So looking at the first one, we have Arcane Smite. So what this does is it is a leap, and then you strike the ground, and it leaves a hazardous area, like a pool behind, that inflicts impairment. So impairment is stacks that you can apply to enemies, and it deals 10% weapon damage per second for the arcane damage, and then it also inflicts a 10% weaken, which you can actually stack that up to 3 times. So stacking your impairment, pretty easy and quick to do with this weapon, it seems, and it's a pretty massive weaken, so having that weakening definitely helps and makes a big difference in terms of survivability for you and your team. With the passives, you get some cooldown reduction. You get another, like we talked about earlier, you actually get a perk within this ability that, depending on which shield you're using, it will grant different things. Now, again, I'm not running a shield currently, so unfortunately, this is kind of a wasted perk for me, but I needed it in order to get to the last part, which ends up, what it does is it any allies that enter that hazardous, that kind of like pool area, circle area, they obtain deflecting frailty. I'm terrible with pronunciations, but they end up getting that on them, which when attacked will inflict a stacking weaken to enemy attackers when hit, reducing the enemy's damage dealt by 5%. So if they're in that pool and they have that stack of deflecting frailty, essentially you're just applying more weaken as they're getting hit. So like as a tank, if you're getting hit, you're just applying more weaken, you're getting hit for less and less and less. On top of that, you also get a 10% lifesteal for 3 seconds when you do get hit. So it's kind of a neat change, neat idea. And then with the deflecting frailty, that duration actually increases with focus. So it's the first time we've actually seen an attribute affect the duration of an ability or of a perk. So that's really cool that they did it a little different for that. The next ability, and we'll go over the passive abilities on the outside of the abilities after this. The next one is Arcane Vortex, which is probably my favorite of the Flail abilities so far. Essentially what it is, you just spin your flail around in a giant circle, giant vortex, and you hit everything in that area. You create an empower for yourself and for your allies. You get grit while you do it. As you move down here, if you hit an enemy 4 times with it, you root and immobilize them for 1 second. On top of that, when you hit a target, it grants a stack of haste, so you get movement speed buff, and then all allies within the radius of the attack are also granted haste, so you're applying haste as well with that same ability. And then on top of all of that, you're also cleansing crowd control status. You make them immune to crowd control for 2 seconds, and then they're also healed for 65% weapon damage. So it's a really, really crazy ability, and I'm very, very, very excited to be running that. I'll probably be running that with my healer. I'll probably run that with most of my builds as of right now. Again, by live that could change, but as of right now, that is by far my favorite ability, is the Arcane Vortex. The next ability for the Cleric, and the last one for Cleric side, is the Arcane Eruption. Now, this one I wasn't overly excited about when I read it at first, but then I started playing around with it, tried it in some duels and OPR, and it was actually really, really fun and really nice. For one, it does apply stacks of impairment, so like we talked about on that first one, you do get those stacks applied here. So really nice that you can apply this weakening to enemies, even outside of just like one ability. So you're able to apply it with multiple abilities and get those stacks pretty easily. And more or less what it is, it's a whip. You whip, and then there's a follow-up, like another whip attack right after that, which does more damage. So it's really, really cool. With the passive perks, that first one is if the first attack of burst are slowed, if it hits them, they are slowed. So it is a massive slow. It's a 40% slow, so it's really, really huge, and it's for 3 seconds. So I like it because you can use it as a peel, you can use it as a chase, you can kind of use it in various different ways. It's not the highest DPS ability, but it does have that functionality of being able to slow and stuff. So I really like that. Plus, you're still applying impairment stacks. With the next passive on this, the follow-up attack extends the duration of all debility. So if you, let's say you apply a weaken and then you hit them with that, it will actually increase like the time of the weaken and time of disease, anything like that. It just increases the duration of that by 30%, which is pretty sweet. It's a good chunk of time added on. And then for the last part of this ability, the follow-up attack. So if you get the supportive blessing perk, the follow-up attack consumes 1 stack of impairment on the target hit, triggering a chain that will bounce up to 4 times to allies within 6 meters of player, granting 130% of its total damage as health to each ally it chains to, and 80% of its total damage to self. So it's another heal. So you are getting plenty of healing abilities out of this weapon, on top of applying a life steal. So you apply the life steal and 2 heals on top of that, and survivability is like really good. I've been very impressed with it. Great survivability, but with the armor changes, with resilient and everything, you still are pretty fragile if you're in light armor. You definitely need to be careful, because even though you can take all this, healing and pump out a lot of healing, if they are able to burn through that health faster than you're able to heal through it, you're still going to die pretty quickly in some of these fights. So you still want to be careful with it. But it sounds like for like those real tanky builds, it's going to be pretty sweet. And again, this is just cleric side. This is the supportive, healing, weakened side. We haven't even gotten into the fortify side of things on the Bastion. But for the cleric side at the bottom here, while within 4 meters of 1 or more allies, grant passive healing to self and all allies that heals for 16% weapon damage for 2 seconds. I did test this out. It's pretty crazy. I don't know how strong or weak this actually is. Like if you have a whole bunch of bruisers all with this, like how much healing is actually stacking? You know what I mean? Like if each one is healing 16% weapon damage every 2 seconds, like is it just like insane healing? So that much we'll have to see down the road, and maybe we'll have to get some testing where we get a bunch of people together and just like try it out. But it's a pretty interesting perk for sure. All right, looking at the passives, we'll go through all these on cleric side. Weighted superiority. So this is a really cool one that's actually dependent on your equip load. So depending on what equip load you have, light, medium, or heavy, it will actually give you different cooldown reductions. So on light, you actually get your cooldown reduction when you hit stuff. Medium, it's a 5% cooldown instead of a 1%, and that is when dodging an attack, so that's pretty sweet. And then with heavy, cooldown reduction, 1% cooldown reduction when a hit or blocking a hit. So that's pretty straightforward. You're blocking, you're getting hit, you're getting your cooldowns. But really cool. I like the direction they're going with the equip loads. They're really bringing different value to different equip loads, and I think that's really cool. Oppressive advantage. So abilities and heavy attacks attack hits against targets with less than 50% health. Grant 5% anointed and 10% haste to self for 3 seconds. Anointed power skills with focus, increasing its power up to 20%. Anointed increases the amount of health gained when healed. So it should be your incoming healing. It should increase the amount of healing you yourself are taking in. And that's at least how I'm understanding that, which would be pretty sweet, because then you can definitely take more healing in, whether you're a tank or heal, support, anything. Getting more incoming healing in that situation is really nice. Next, we have the Happy Flails perk. I really like this one. This is a really cool one, and I'll explain why. So, hitting a target with a basic attack within 3 seconds of using an ability will inflict exhaust, reducing stamina regen rate by 15% for 5 seconds. And what I found is if you pair this perk with the Arcane Eruption, it's really nice, because then you use your whip, you slow them to 40%. That allows you to stay in range and get that light attack. Usually when someone's slowed, they're going to be utilizing their stamina to try to avoid attacks, and when they're doing that, they are exhausted, meaning they don't have the same stam regen that they once had. So a pretty neat combination that I think I'm going to be running with various builds to test out and see. Next, we'll actually look at the spiky impairment. So being hit or blocking a hit from a melee attack well above 90% health inflicts a stack of impairment for 6 seconds on the attacker, dealing 10%. So it's the same impairment stacks. Essentially, if you're just getting hit, or blocking a hit and you're 90% health, you're just applying those stacks for free. So as a healer, I don't think I'll be running that because I really don't want to be getting hit that many times. But as a tank, I think that actually has a lot of value to it. There is a 5-second cooldown, but still, I don't think it's that bad. Vital Embrace. While at or below 50% health, all flail attacks grant 3% lifesteal while attacking targets. While above 50% health, all flail attacks extend the duration of damage over time effects on targets by 7%. So a really nice passive ability. You know, you get that extra lifesteal if you're at or below 50% health, so it just kind of helps to get a little bit of that health back quicker. And then when you're above 50% health, then you're extending the duration of your damage over time. So it is a really nice perk because whether you're above or below 50%, you're actually getting different buffs. So really interesting how they kind of split some of that up more on this weapon. And then the last passive perk on the cleric side is the leader of the pack. When no allies are within 5 meters, all flail attacks deal 10% more base damage. When one or more allies are within 5 meters, they gain Empower, increasing their damage dealt by 5%. I really, really like that because if you're on your own, you get a little extra damage buff. If you're by your allies, they get a little extra damage buff. So from a support standpoint, but in terms of like, hey, I got separated, I'm on my own, you can defend yourself a little bit easier, but then you can also help push and attack with your team easier because you'll be giving them a little extra empowerment if you're nearby. So cleric side, really, really, really cool. I like it. I can tell that they really wanted it to be like healer support focused. What I see is a lot of people obviously running life staff with it, but I also foresee people running Void Gauntlet potentially with some of this. Since they both scale with focus, I'm wondering if people will try to do like some weird focus builds. I might try that and just see if it makes sense to do a focus build with the Void and with Flail. It might be awful, but we'll see. All right, so we went through all the cleric side. Before we go to the Bastion side, we're going to back out here, and I'm going to show you just the abilities. So in order, what we're going to be looking at is Arcane Smite, and then I will do the Arcane Vortex, and then Arcane Eruption. So the Arcane Smite is that leaping attack, and then as you slam down, it leaves this area, and this is where we apply that impairment if they're standing in it, weaken all that fun stuff. The next one is the Arcane Vortex. So this is our main heal, as well as does decent damage, can do a root, empowers. It's pretty crazy, and it looks really, really cool. So that is the Arcane Vortex. And then the last one is that one right there. So that's the whip that we were talking about with the Arcane Eruption. So with the first hit, like it said, targets hit with the first attack of burst are slowed. So that very first, that attack first, that first one will apply the slow, and then that second one is the follow-up attack that ends up doing a little bit more damage at the end. So that is the cleric side. Very, very cool. Next, let's take a look over at the Bastion side of the tree. All right, looking at the Flail tree again here. We'll take a look at the Bastion side. Now, the Bastion side I haven't played with quite as much. It does look very, very interesting, but I haven't put together a tank build in the PTR yet, so I'm not 100% sure how all of these abilities work as far as functionality goes, but we'll take a look at them a little bit closer here. So the first one is Barrage. This is essentially going to be your charge, your rush. You're going to be able to get away potentially, but also chase and attack. It's a very interesting ability because it's only 10 meters long, but then when you do the wind up at the end, so you charge and then you do a wind up and slam, the charge at the end actually moves you like an extra like 5 meters, it feels like. I think we tested it at 15 meters away. If you trigger at 15, you'll hit the target you're aiming for. Because you charge 10 and then another 5 to actually like slam everything down. So pretty interesting in terms of distance compared to like charge or burnout. Charge or burnout I think is like 15 to 18 meters, so it's a little bit further of a distance. But what this does is you are going to charge, slam the ground, and you're going to stagger the enemies within that area. Now it doesn't do a lot of damage. It really doesn't do much at all, but the stagger is really nice. And then looking at the perks here, hitting a target with any of the barrage hits will grant a 30% fortify. Fortify has a 2-second duration, and every hit extends the duration of the status effect by 2 seconds to a max of 8 seconds. So pretty neat that you can actually get a fortify out of it as well. Really helps. Abiding superiority. So this is another shield specific perk where round, kite, tower shield are all going to be different. Round shield's going to be more base damage. Kite shield's going to inflict a slow, and then the tower shield is going to apply grit to it while the ability is active. So pretty cool differences in the different shields there. Bulldoze. Barrage can now block attacks while charging forward without consuming stamina and will push all enemies moved through to the side. So really cool because you can just like barrel through enemies, and I'm really curious with a tank build how that's going to play out. Flail to launch. Barrage's attack now triggers a 2.5 meter blast of energy around the target on hit, dealing 35% arcane weapon damage to all nearby targets and granting Fortify to all allies within the radius, increasing armor by 20% for 8 seconds. So pretty cool as far as the Fortify application, because like it's nice to be able to apply Fortify to your team, you know. It's never going to be a bad thing to give them more armor, especially with all the rend and everything else that's out there nowadays. All right, next we have Trip, which I think is a really, really fun ability. The range on it is pretty low, but I think it is pretty fun. Essentially what you do is you just use your trail and you trip someone. You flail it out there and you trip them. Pretty neat. And it does knock them down. It does a little bit of damage, 50% arcane weapon damage, and knocking them to the ground. Tripping a target applies a special debuff to the target lasting 3 seconds. Allies that hit the affected enemy will reduce the duration of all damage over time effects on themselves by 10% per hit. So I think this is the first time where we've actually seen an ability or a perk like this create dot cooldown or dot reduction from hitting an enemy or anything like that. It's pretty cool. We'll see how useful it is. It might be one of those things where it doesn't seem useful, but it actually is helping you out a lot. I'm not sure yet, but kind of interesting on that. Hitting weakened targets with Trip will inflict 15% rend for 5 seconds on the target and granting 15% Fortify on self. So pretty cool that you can get a Fortify and apply a rend at the same time with just one ability. Adds a follow-up, a heavy attack that deals 145. So that part's really nice because then you can at least like trip someone if they're low, trip them, follow up, maybe get a kill after that. So Trip is a really, really cool ability. I actually like it a lot. The last ability is Warding Bludgeon, and performing a spinning leap, then swing the flail down to strike enemies, dealing 100% weapon damage. While leaping, trigger a burst of energy, granting a reinforced fortify to self and all allies within 3 meters of player, increasing armor by 50% for 8 seconds or until 3 hits are taken. So it's just like a massive burst of fortify for yourself and any allies that are near you. But it is very limited as far as how long it's going to last for you, since 3 hits can happen really, really fast. Stable impairment. First perk here, stamina damage taken is reduced by 25% for 0.5 seconds after activating block. Additionally, blocking hits while the reinforced fortify from Warding Bludgeon is active will inflict a stack of impairment for 6 seconds. So even on the Bastion, the tank side, you still have an application of impairment. So you can apply that disease or that weakening and do a little extra damage. So really, really nice that you have that option. And then on the last part, Best Friends. Upon ability activation, a nearby ally within 6 meters is selected and you become linked to them. While the connection is active, they gain Empower, increasing their base damage by 5%, and you both gain damage absorption, reducing damage taken by 10% for 8 seconds or until players are more than 6 meters apart from each other. A really cool ability, the fact that they're actually linking players together to work together, but they have to stay close, really creates for some cool combos and some ideas that we might have to combo, you know, some of our different builds together. So I really like that. I'm curious how it'll work. I haven't really done any testing with it yet, so we'll see, but I like the idea of it a lot. All right, let's go through, or let's look at the bottom, the ultimate perk on this side, the Human Shield. Hitting a target with an ability while within 6 meters of an ally applies a status effect linking yourself and a single ally to each other for 5 seconds. While the effect is active, The ally will only take 50% of the incoming damage and causing you to inherit 35% of the incoming damage they didn't take. So let's say you have a light armor on your team, and you want to link to them. You could actually more or less take the hits for them, reduce the damage they're taking, but you end up taking the damage. So very interesting. I'm going to have to play around with that and see how that all works, because I haven't tested that at all yet. So we'll see what that has to offer as I play around with it. All right, looking at the remaining passive perks here, we have Vital Suppressant. So while at or above 50% health, reduce damage taken by 4%. And then while below 50% health, reduce the attacker's stamina damage dealt by blocking by 10%. So really, really cool that they are really playing into this whole, like, if you're above 50, you get one perk. If you're below 50, you get another perk. It creates for this, like, survivability, but also maybe even like a little bit of damage, you know, giving. I don't know. It's different. It's very interesting, and I like it a lot because it's a nice change of pace. Next, we have Cured Flailment. Hitting a target with a heavy attack within 3 seconds of an ability will cleanse 1 stack of any debuff from self and will also inflict a stack of impairment. So again, we're stacks of impairment that we're able to apply utilizing that Bastion side. Really, really nice. And then we remove a debuff. So being able to cleanse a debuff, never a bad thing. We did look at the reductive superiority, where the round, kite, tower shield all have different buffs or debuffs. So increased duration of all limited duration buffs on player by 10%. Really, really nice if you are running a shield, because then if you're more support and you're just trying to apply buffs to your teammates and just keep them there, round shield might not be a bad idea. Kite shield, decreased duration of damage over time and debilitating effects on player by 10%. Also not a bad thing. Then for Tower Shield, decreased duration of crowd control effects on player. That's pretty massive to get a 10% reduction in crowd control effects on top of that. Because if you're in heavy armor, if you're using a Tower Shield, I kind of assume you are, you're probably going to be able to get out of like CC very, very, very easily. All right, next is Flail Mary. While stamina is at or below 30%, activating an ability will grant 15 stamina. Pretty straightforward. Sword and Shield has a similar, or had a similar ability. I don't know if it still does. I haven't looked super closely at Sword and Shield yet, but they have one where Shield Bash and Shield Rush can give you 15 stamina as well. So very, very similar, but you have to be below 30% for that to activate. Mitigated Protection. So this is another equip load one, which actually I really like. So it's a heavy, medium, light equip load. When blocking a hit, gain a 3-second tracking status effect. Every blocked hit extends the duration of the status effect by 3 seconds to a max of 9 seconds. And while the effect is active, gain variable damage absorption based on current health percent and equip load. That would be the sandworm behind me. I can hear it. So in heavy, you get a 5% absorption at full health, increasing to a max of 20% mitigation as health decreases. So as you are losing health, your mitigation of that damage is just growing higher and higher. Medium is 3% with a 13% max, and then light's a 1% with a 7% max. So seems like a pretty good layout. Heavy armors are going to be very hard to kill, but I do think that disease is going to play a huge factor into the counter to these tanks. So we'll see how that all goes. And then the last passive perk is Reinforced Vitality, and this is really, really straightforward. Just increase your max health by 25% of your physical armor rating while the flail is equipped. So as long as your flail is equipped, you get that extra HP bonus. So we're going to see some real tanky boys out there with some high HP. So get your disease ready, because we are definitely going to have to disease to get through some of that HP and armor. All right, so we looked at the Bastion side. Let's take a look at the actual abilities. We'll look at Barrage, then Trip, and then Warding Bludgeon. So Barrage, I'll show you here. We'll get a little distance. It's a nice little rush, little wind up, and then you do get animation locked into that last swing. But if you wanted to use it as more of an escape, you could potentially take away... Well, no, there's actually no way you could do that. So unfortunately with that, you do get animation locked. So for some reason I was thinking you could maybe change it, but I'll show you here. So as we're going, I'm hitting shift, and you have to go through that whole thing before you can actually roll again. So do keep that in mind if you're going to use it as more of an escape. So next is going to be Trip. And this one, I don't have anyone tested on right now, but it's really simple. You just reach out, and then it trips them, and then you'll have a follow-up that'll actually swing down and hit them. Pretty cool idea for an ability to be able to trip someone with the flail. And then the last one is the bludgeon one. Go like that, and then if there's an ally nearby, then we will end up being connected to them with the best friends perk. So really cool abilities, really cool ideas. I do really like, there's that follow-up with the trip. I do really like the abilities, the sounds, the animations. They did a really good job with it. But that is kind of the flail. That is what we're looking at for all the perks, all the abilities with where it sits in the PTR. Now that can definitely change by live, and I would expect some of it to change by live. So this is just our first glance. This is so we can get some ideas. Again, I'm going to have all sorts of build videos set up for Season 3, so we have a lot to look forward. But next, let's take a look at just a little bit of gameplay to finish this video out so you can kind of see the flail in action. It's not the best gameplay because it is just PTR. Everyone's just running around trying to just test stuff out. But just so you can see it in action and get a little bit of gameplay of it. So enjoy some flail gameplay. All right, that is going to do it for today's video. Now, again, this was a PTR. There is a lot that can change. There's a lot of information out there right now. So I know it's a lot to take in. I'm taking it one step at a time here. I'm very excited for the expansion, though, in Season 3. Again, for Flail, though, I will be trying to make as many builds as I can for it as fast as I can. So if you do want to see those videos and do want to get some more, insight into how it's going to work with some of the other weapons, definitely subscribe to the channel because I am going to try to get as many build videos out with Flail as possible so people have those options. And then from there, we're going to definitely branch out because there's so many major changes coming to the game. Major musket changes are in and all of that, which I'll probably end up doing another video for musket because those changes are massive. There's just a lot to go through. So that is going to do it for today's video, though. So thank you for hanging in there, checking out the Flail for the first time with me. I really appreciate all the support everyone's been giving me, especially with Season 3 coming up. But that is going to do it for today's video. So thank you again, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.